Welcome to Shaq's house. Shaq's house. That's our Shaq. You're now in Shaq's house.
What's up, folks? How you doing? It's your boy, the one and only Shaq House. Yeah, I hope your past 2 weeks have been going good for you, and I hope you have a good Memorial Day weekend. Yeah, it's going to be fire this weekend. And speaking of fire, this next video right here, oh, it is going to be supernova. But we ain't talking about no fire mutants, nah. We're talking about mutant-hating mutants. That's right. I covered the Fenris twins not too long ago, but they're not exactly the same thing. They're just racially prejudiced mutants. These people right here, how are you going to be mutants and hate other mutants? Yeah, they're from Genosha. If you recall from the X-Men cartoon and the X-Men comic, Genosha being the island where they turn mutants into slaves. Well, the quartet of mutants we're going to be talking about, they're called the Genoshan Press Gang. That's right. They volunteered to serve Genosha so they wouldn't have to be slaves. They're the Uncle Toms of the mutant race. That's right. Yeah, Uncle Ruckus is from the Boondocks. You remember Uncle Ruckus? The reeve of the Lago spread across my whole body, like that black symbiote that turned Topher Grace into Venom in Spider-Man 3. Like that. That's right. Yeah, the Genoshan Press Gang, mutants who hate mutants. Check them out.
Alright, here's some background on Genosha before we get started. Genosha was an island nation located in the Indian Ocean, east of the African continent, north of the Seychelles Islands, and midway between those islands and Madagascar. Even though it was mostly populated by Caucasians, it's unknown as to whether Genosha had a native population before it was settled by Westerners. At first, trade was the basis of the Genoshan economy, and later the steel industry took the lead. Eventually, Genosha was making major strides in computer and space technology and was self-sufficient agriculturally, and it was, in many respects, technologically advanced over even the United States. However, it was on Genosha's advances in genetic engineering that much of the rest of the country's economy was based. And unlike its African neighbors, Wakanda being the hidden exception, Genosha bloomed and blossomed. Though Genosha was advertised by its government and mass media as a quote-unquote green and pleasant land, it was later discovered that Genosha was in fact a technocratic nation whose socio-economic infrastructure was built on the backs of its superhuman mutant population. All Genoshan citizens who test positive for a mutant gene become property of the government, stripped of all their rights and conditioned to work as slaves, with their minds rendered docile and their powers retooled to serve the country in some fashion. The government also assembled magistrates, a squad of soldiers and law enforcement officers specially trained in hand-to-hand combat and with vast amount of access to advanced weaponry and equipment to watch over the mutant slave population. An elite division, however, of magistrates was referred to as the Genoshan Press Gang. They were comprised of mutant citizens who voluntarily chose to serve the Genoshan government and so avoided undergoing the mutate bonding process that would have turned them into mindless slaves. The fact that they were willing allowed the government to claim that Genosha's mutant citizens had voluntarily chosen their fate for the benefit of their country. Yeah, right. Hawkshaw. Hawkshaw's mutant power is that he possessed certain undefined psionic senses. He is capable of sensing people through their proximity, detecting whenever people entered a certain radius around his person. This power is moderately sensitive to the mental activity of these people. He can't read thoughts, but he can recognize if these people in his vicinity are awake or asleep. He can recognize mutants by their presence and sense familiar ones that he has encountered before. His ability extends to detecting humans and animals even across continents. His senses may have had an electromagnetic basis to them as well, since Roma's spell of electronic invisibility over the Outback-era X-Men made them undetectable even to Hawkshaw's power. Pipeline. Pipeline was born with the mutant power to digitize matter, converting it into streams of electronic information and then directly and manipulating this information in different ways. Generally, his power is a means of teleportation. Pipeline will transform people or objects into electromagnetic coding, store them inside the datapad that he carries with him, and then transmit them across a standard transmission signal to reconstitute them at a new location. It has been suggested that he could keep someone trapped indefinitely in a digitized state if he wished, or possibly kill them simply by erasing their file. His range is apparently limited by only the range of the transmission equipment that he carries, which is to say, instantaneous transport from America or Australia to the southeastern coast of Africa and back. Pipeline often seemed limited to transmitting only organic matter, as the people that he has kidnapped with his power tend to rematerialize without any clothes on. He has, however, summoned an entire armed Genoshan combat battalion before, and once mentioned having to recalibrate his sensors for inorganic matter. Now, operating on this assumption, Pipeline could conceivably transport organic and inorganic matter, but must do so separately because of some difference in the transmission process. Transporting people with clothes and armaments could therefore be possible, but only with advanced time and planning to write the code, which would accommodate a combination of different digitized items. In addition, he has demonstrated the ability to incorporate additional lines of code into a transmitted person's digitized form, so that when they are reconstituted, they arrive with a simulated narcotic effect in their system that makes them more docile and compliant. Punchout. Punchout's mutant powers include superhuman strength, stamina, endurance, and invulnerability. The limits of her superhuman strength is unknown, but it was originally at class 10, and her skin, bones, muscles, and internal organs are all stronger than steel, albeit weaker than adamantium. This makes her highly durable to injury, bullets, from temperature extremes, flames, microwave attacks, and massive impacts, including falls from airborne vehicles. She also has superhuman speed, running up to 65 miles per hour, superhuman stamina capable of peak exertion for several hours, as well as agility and reflexes. Wipeout. Wipeout possessed the mutant power to create self-perpetuating energy bursts that operated on a biological level. By focusing his energy on superhumans, that would remove the mental circuits that allow them access to their powers. Primarily, he used his powers on his fellow mutants, creating an energy blockage in their system that prevented biogenetic power from properly traveling from their X-Factor gene to the rest of their system, thereby preventing them from using their powers. The power block lasted indefinitely and required no concentration to maintain. Mutants affected by his power remained powerless after Wipeout fell asleep or even after he was killed. He could mentally remove his energy from their systems at will if he chose to, thereby reactivating their powers. His power could also affect memories as well. When he first attempted to use his power on sentient technology, however, it created a disruption effect rather than a removal. Okay, here are some thoughts on the Genoshan Press game. Now, following the events of the crossover known as the Extinction Agenda, the secret of Genosha's prosperity was exposed to the rest of the world and their government was overthrown. When a decision was made to eradicate their mutant population entirely, the mutants fought back, plunging the country into a civil war and causing the economy to collapse. Now, the United Nations, they stepped in and granted sovereignty of the country over to Magneto, and it was under his rule where Genosha, including 16 million of its mutant population, was destroyed by Cassandra Nova's wild Sentinels. It's unknown if the surviving members of the Press Gang were actually on Genosha at the time. Now, before that, Pipeline defected over to Magneto's side during his rule, Wipeout was actually killed during the Extinction Agenda, and Hawkshaw and Punchout were last seen in a Fantastic Four issue prior to Magneto gaining control over the country, and it's possible they may have fled the country during his rule as well too. Now, each member of the Press Gang, their code names make sense. Punchout, who looks like Frenzy from the Alliance of Evil, the Acolytes, and later the X-Men, she's just muscle. Wipeout, who looks like a grandfather, he just wipes out powers. Pipeline, he turns things into emails and uses transmission signals to send them. And Hawkshaw, he's a detector with a plainclothes detective outfit to prove it. Now, like I said earlier, the Genoshan Press Gang, they are the Uncle Toms of the mutant race. They're mutant on the outside, but human on the inside. They consider themselves better than their mutant brethren and treat them and the slave Genoshan mutates with the same prejudices and insults that humans have for them. They're like different versions of that self-hating black cop from Boys in the Hood, like this.
You know, it's too bad you didn't get him. Be one less nigga out here in the streets we have to worry about.
They say Gene Joke and Mutie with the same abandon as the human magistrates, the same people who probably talk mad shit about the press gang when they're not around. Only Pipeline received any character development, as he had a family before Genosha got plunged into a civil war. There was a fifth member of the press gang named Gunshot. He had purple skin with neuro-cybernetic weaponry, but he felt more like a one-shot character. Now, if the surviving members of the press gang were not on Genosha during the Sentinel attack, then they were depowered during M-Day, and with Pipeline's exception, I don't think the others would have been receptive to going to Krakoa, whether they were resurrected or gained their powers back via Crucible. Now, Hawkshaw, Punchout, and Wipeout, they all seem to internalize their hatred for mutancy to the point where they shared the same stereotypical views as their oppressors. So, I don't think they would have been welcome on Krakoa at all. Alright folks, that's what I got for you this week. I'm going to be doing something on another Genoshan group for my next entry, so tune in then, and I hope your Memorial Day weekend goes good. You have a good weekend, folks. Later!
Mansion, apartment.
Shack, house. Yes!
Yeah.